that meeting room, I know. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much. We are so excited. This has been a long time coming. The Faculty Justice Network, as most of you already know, because you've engaged with us before, really exists to help address the academic, personal, professional needs of faculty and graduate students of color. And so conversation that we have been having for quite a while now, in addition to using the resources available to all of us as faculty and as graduate students at WVU through the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity, is really, creating some space to have a conversation around the very important issue of faculty mentoring. And so our own Faculty Justice Network member, Dr. Anne-Marie Hibbert, has agreed to talk with us today about the importance of this topic, but also her own experiences, and provide some advice for all of us as we, pursue our faculty careers and objectives. So I know that in sending out this invitation, we included a link so that you could read about her background, but because of how highly esteemed she is at WVU, I would just like to honor her with reading through that. Dr. Anne-Marie Hibbert is the finance department chair. She's a full professor. She is the interim. Is it still interim? I know that's just on our website. Dr. Hibbert's research is primarily in the area of behavioral finance. She has published articles in top finance journals, including the Journal of Financial Economics, Review of Finance, Journal of Banking and Finance, and others. She was an elected member of the board of the Eastern Finance Association from 2017 to 2020, and is currently an associate editor of the International Journal of Finance and Economics, an A-level journal on the College Journal list. Dr. Hibbert most recently served as the coordinator for the Finance PhD program. She is an executive committee member of WVU's Faculty Senate. She also currently chairs the Faculty Senate's Research Integrity Committee and is immediate past chair of the Committee on Committees, Membership and Constituencies. Dr. Hibbert was the recipient of the 2019 Chambers College Dean's Award of Distinction in Service. Since 2017, Dr. Hibbert has been a faculty coach for the National Center for Faculty Development and Diversity's Faculty Success Program, and was a recipient of their inaugural Coaching Excellence Award in 2021. Prior to academia, Dr. Hibbert was a corporate finance executive. Let's just welcome her. Dr. Hibbert, thank you so much again for agreeing to be a part of not only the FJN, but on the advisory team. So I appreciate you so much, and welcome today.
Well, thank you. Dr. Anderson, I'm wondering, who are you talking about? Because when I heard all those things you mentioned, certainly can't be about me. But thank you all, I really appreciate it.
That's just how fabulous you are.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, and you can see my screen as well. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, thank you all so much for being here today or this afternoon for this workshop for us to talk about mentoring, something that's not very well understood or we don't have a clear definition of, but which is super important if we're to succeed both in our personal and professional lives. And everything that Dr. Anderson just mentioned, which I have humbly achieved so far, and hopefully will achieve some more in my life and career, I attribute to having great mentors. I mean, that has been the hallmark of my life. I don't think I would be anywhere near where I am without having good mentors. So, does this work? I hope it does. A little about why I consider myself comfortable to talk about this has to do with my experience from being a mentor, being a mentee, and being a coach for the NCFDD since 2017. So I've had, as I just mentioned or alluded to, I've had numerous mentors, too many to mention, but I thought today I will mention one, who was my first mentor. My first mentor was my my boss at my first job, Glenn Lawrence. He is a CEO of Couples Resorts in Jamaica. He hired me when I was an 18-year-old, straight out of high school. I hadn't gone to university because my mom had just been diagnosed with cancer. And so I needed to work for a while. And in the first 2 years of my work life before I went back to school, this gentleman you're looking at on your screen poured into me constantly, ensured that I believed in myself, and encouraged me to go back to school. I don't think there was a week that he did not remind me to. And I will forever be grateful. Yesterday, I reached out to a current mentee of his to mention that I was going to talk about him or mention him in this talk today. So that's Glenn Lawrence, one of my first mentor, even though it was not a formal mentoring relationship. And I've had numerous, the screen, wouldn't have enough slides to put all the mentors I've had. Now I've also been at the other end, and I'll mention this a bit later on, because I think we all have to move away from being either a mentor or a mentee and see ourselves in this dual role, mentor-mentee, in most of our relationships. So one of the first persons I mentored is Alvario Golden. And before you all say, why am I showing two males? I struggled with this because I'm like, if I put a male and a female, then which of them do I put as a mentor and a mentee? So I said, okay, since I am a female, I will put two guys up here. So Alvario Golden was one of the first persons I mentored when he was a student at the the University of the West Indies in Jamaica. This was part of a formal mentoring program that they had there. So while I was the financial manager at a hotel in Kingston, close to that university, they had a program where they had executives at the hotel or at businesses in that area mentor students. And he was one of the first persons that I mentioned. And I'm happy to say that he now has his master's, a master's in finance, an MBA, and is a vice president at Citi, and somebody who I constantly talk to. Again, this is just one example. I could list numerous up here. Now, Dr. Anderson mentioned just now that I'm also a faculty coach, and I'm currently part of the mentoring program for my alma mater, Florida International University, where I'm mentor at least 2 students in their business program each year. But as part of the NCFDD, I went through their program, their flagship program, their faculty success program back in 2015. And I started coaching for them in 2017. At last count, I have coached 69 faculty so far. Each semester I coach a group of 4. This past semester I coached a group of 5 faculty members through their faculty success program. And one of the weeks in that 12-week program is dedicated purely to mentoring. And that's where we try to help them to identify mentors, see the importance of mentoring, et cetera, et cetera. One thing I should have said at the start, I will stop at various points for you to ask questions, but please do not hesitate to jump in. I don't want it to be too formal. I like my talks to be interactive. Okay, so hopefully I have a little cred based on what I said just now to talk about what or give you a few tips. I don't want to say advice, few tips on how you could approach the subject of mentoring and help it to use that tool. I consider it a tool to achieve success. Now, as a faculty member, most of you, I think, we have grad student too, but if your career as a junior career as a faculty member, there are a number of things that you will have to make decisions about. There are a number of buckets of responsibility that you'll have, that you'll be faced with a lot of how do I? So you may say, I need to find some people to help me navigate this, because in grad school, you're not taught a lot of this. So during this talk, I'm going to try to approach it from, I'm going to use the approach of the 5 W's and the H to say, what is a mentor? What really is a mentor or mentoring? When do you need mentors, or when are the points in your life, in your career, that you most need mentoring? Why should you really put yourself out there to get a mentor or be a mentee? And who are the people that you should target to serve in your mentoring network? And where I'm putting a slight twist on it, not in terms of location, but what are the boundaries that you should put in place to ensure that your mentoring network or your mentoring relationships serve you well? And finally, I'll talk about some do's and don'ts about doing mentoring in a great way, not just in a good way. Now, if you were to look up the word mentored in a dictionary, for example, say we pull up the Merriam-Webster dictionary, you'd see that a mentoring is a trusted counselor or guide, okay? Somebody you look up to. And if you were to look for synonyms, you would see coach, counselor, guide, lead, pilot, and the list goes on. But what all of these synonyms for the most part seem to suggest is that there's this, I'm going to borrow Carrie Rockmore word, guru. So if you ever do the faculty success program or do any of the NCFDD webinars, you will see, or on mentoring, you'll see that Carrie Ann talks a lot about this guru mentor. We try to dismiss that notion and look at it more as somebody you can call on for a need, not this person that you look up to as, you know, for everything, who can tell you what to do, who can lead you to success, but somebody who can answer questions. And so I want you to start looking at mentoring as relationships that you tap into for, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I get this? Okay, so start thinking of that if you haven't yet started thinking in that way. So when will you need mentors? And I'm going to suggest that you don't wait until you actually need them to have them or to identify them. However, there is research that shows that there are certain times in your life that you have a greater need for mentors. And I'm going to suggest that one of those times are times of transitions, whether it be personal or professional. What am I talking about here? So you transition from being a grad student to being a tenure track assistant professor or a teaching professor, or you were a member of staff and or a director and you transitioned to being an instructor or a professor. You were an assistant professor and you just got tenure and promoted to an associate professor. Those periods of transitions usually present themselves with new needs, new questions that you need to get answered. How do I do my year-end report? I was talking to a new faculty a few years ago, and he said, I was told to do my year-end report, but I don't even know what that looks like. And I don't even know what I should ask. So a lot of times it's not even just having questions. Beyond that, it is, what questions should I be asking that I'm not even aware of? So I'm going to stop sharing here for a second. I'm going to pause so I can get some feedback, because I feel like I'm having a monologue. And if you've ever been to any of my classes, my students will tell you that I call on them, I stop. I don't want it to be just me talking at you. So one question I'm going to start with is, and I'll make it simple. How many mentors do you currently have? If I were to go around the room And I'm gonna say, put it in the chat to make it easy. I've done a page, but I'll just make it simple. If you were to count now, how many mentors do you currently have? Okay, I see one. Is it Fanica?
It's Fanika.
Fanika, sorry. I think I messed up too, sorry. Fanika, we're gonna have to work on that. We have three, we have one or two or zero. No, we need to work on that, Kirsten. Let me see. So we need to roughly 5 to 7, several. Okay, Cheryl, you have a good network of mentors. That's good. So I'm going to flip it. How many people do you currently, or how many folks do you currently mentor? How many mentees do you currently have? Rachel, I know you can't write the numbers. You're in the hundreds, right? Fanika, you're about even too. Ron, I need to sign up to be your mentee. Come on. Maybe 10 or so. So we see some, Khalil, how many? You had 7, and so I'm seeing where there's a lot of mismatch. Some have a lot of mentors, but then very few mentees. Some have the other way around, a lot of mentees, and some have an even split. Now, what I want to suggest before I continue with on the side is that you start thinking about ways, or thinking about, do you need more mentoring? And I want you to think about, do you need more mentoring in specific ways, which I'll pose some questions to you shortly. And should you be a mentee to more or less? Are you spreading yourself too thinly? Because this could also go, I see some of you have several or, 10. So are you pouring so much that you're probably pouring too much of yourself into others and not getting, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with giving to others, it's a good thing, but you also want to ensure there's some balance there. One of the things I've seen from coaching faculty is that they're giving so much of themselves that there's hardly anything, and they're not being replenished, so they're not being poured into. So you want to also guard against that, because I don't want this to be a talk where I'm saying to you, oh, go out and get mentoring, and forget about that self-care piece, that wellness, that is super important. Okay, any questions for me? I asked some questions, but I need some questions too.
I'll just say that it's funny when you ask that question, because I see myself as a resource. There may be people who say, oh, I consider her a mentor, but I don't see it as a formal relationship. So I'll avail myself to people, or there may be people who seek me out, and I'll give them lots of, just some guidance, share what I know about certain things, but I wouldn't list them as a formal mentor.
And that's where I said, Karen says it this way, which I like. She was like, if she could, she'd get rid of the word mentor, totally. So let's not use that word, because it means different things to different people. It's hard to have somebody, it's hard to describe all of those relationships that are mentoring relationships in one neat box of a definition. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how you could approach mentoring differently, and hopefully we can get some more balance, or see if you need to identify ways you could potentially expand your mentoring network to serve your productivity and your wellness. Okay, so as I was saying, or as I started to say, a good time to identify a set of mentors is when you're changing. But another time to look for mentors is when your circumstances change or things change around you, your world changes. I'm sure we're not too far out of COVID to remember what happened when suddenly we all had to move online. Some of us, some people who had never taught online before, or had never taken classes online before, or had kids who were suddenly having to do school online, or had aging parents who we had to take care of during the pandemic. So these circumstances are circumstances that you may find yourself having a lot of how do I questions. And that's the new approach I hope I can plant a seed that you will start looking at mentoring from that lens of what's the need I have, who are the people that help me to meet those needs or to get those questions answered. So now I'm going to make the big case for mentoring from a faculty or an academic perspective in the framework of how do I? So see, how do I fill in the blank? How do I meet this need? How do I achieve this goal? And I'm going to suggest that you can look at it from two approaches. The first one is professional. So I'm thinking of your roles as an academic or your roles in academia. You are going to be possibly doing some research and writing. And I'm not going to say everyone here has the same buckets of responsibility or that I've captured everyone. I tried to put the ones that are most common. So for example, say your assignment as a faculty member, you have to do some research and writing. So you may want to know, how do I get my work published? Or how do I know which journals should I target? And these are things you should start writing down. How do I address a reviewer's comment? How do I get my first grant? If I'm in a department where grant writing is what is elevated, which grants should I go after? What's the approach? How do I learn about grant writing? I've never done this. How do I write a book if I'm in a department that book is, or in an institution that book writing is what is given priority? How do I get a book proposal? How do I know which publishers I should approach? Now teaching has its own set of challenges. And I know we're in FJN and there's an entire set of research about, how marginalized faculty are, given undue burden in terms of teaching and are also disproportionately affected when it comes on to, for example, student evaluation. How do you, when you get those first negative comments on your student evaluation, what do you do? How do you improve your teaching effectiveness, just generally speaking? How do you ask your chair to not give you that class to teach because you're not comfortable teaching it without seeming like you're copying out? These are things that you want to have mentors to be able to ask. Service, how do I get my service aligned with my research so service doesn't become just a burden? Which committees should I serve on? Should I really be serving on faculty senate, or should I just do department and college service? And bigger thing, how do I say no when I'm asked to be the director of a program if this is not aligned with my long-term goals? How do I say no and not be, that does not affect my career mobility or my chances of promotion going forward? Administration, oops, I faced that recently. I mean, I'm living this right now. I just recently started this role as to chair this department in the summer. How I needed mentoring. I had to reach out to people who I knew I could talk to. Plus, I had to reach out to people who could put me on to their mentors. I mean, I was fortunate to have people in my safe space community who could then loan me their mentors who have experience with administration that I could reach out to. But that was important because these are not things that you should whether you can or not, you should not make these decisions on your own. You should be able to get some good comments, get some input. And yes, ultimately it will be your decision which way you go. But the more information, I'm an empirical scientist. I do data work, so I want data. I want data to be able to assess which decision has a better chance or the most likely chance of being successful in terms of my long-term goals. Outreach, we have a center in our department. You may have a center that you're part of. Should you be partnering with WVU Extension? Should you be reaching out to do? I just met with a student, a member on the Student Government Association. They want to do some more financial literacy. Should I partner with them across campus to integrate or to collaborate on our financial literacy initiative? So these are things that until you know, as I would say, you don't know. And you don't even know what is out there. What should I tap into? So you need people who you can go to and ask these questions. And I'm going to suggest that you should have a list, a nice list that you have ready, people who you can have coffee with before, so that when you need to ask them these questions, you're not just calling them on the phone and say, I've just been asked to serve on faculty senate or just been nominated. Should I do it? That's not the time you want to ask. You want to have these lists of persons ready to ask or to tap into prior to the definitive need presenting itself. Now, on the personal level, the needs are just as important. And this is a thing I like about having been with NCFDD this long, is the fact that we don't see your professional life as being more important, than your personal life. We don't feel like you should give your family what is left over. We believe you should have both professional and personal goals, and they should both be aligned. So you should have mentors that can answer those questions related to family. I need to have a question about my teenager. This is the first time I'm having a teenager. What do I do here? I would also suggest that you want to have people in your mentors who you can talk to about things that are going on in your professional life, but these are safe space that you can bring your truth and not be asked, are you sure you're not overacting? Are you sure this is what was said? So you need safe space. You need people who are concerned or love you enough to stand with you through those challenges, because your health and wellness is just as important as your pocketbook, at least in my opinion. You need mentors who can help you with your financial well-being, who you can open up and say, hey, I think I'm going down the wrong road here in terms of managing my finances. What do I need to do? Do you have an advisor you can put me in contact with? Or this hobby I'm working on, I want it to become a side hustle. I want it to become a business. How do I start a business? Actually, I'm enjoying my job, but I feel like I want to do more. I want to volunteer. I want to help underprivileged youth. How do I do that? Another thing, I've been seeing all of what is going on with, racial justice, all of what is happening, in that realm. And I want to get involved with activism. How do I do this? I don't want to be somebody who just, I'm now on the radar. How will that affect my job? How will I be perceived by my colleagues? How do I do all of these things? These are important questions, and these are things that you first need to start thinking about, and then start thinking about people you should have or identify who you can call on to help you navigate these issues and answer questions related to each of these areas. So let's try to get down to more specificity now. Who should be these people? I would suggest that they should have achieved the goals that you want. So starting with, for example, just now I said professional research and writing. So if I'm using research and writing, say I want to be a prolific scholar, I want to publish in the top 3 journals in my field, then I need to have mentors who have achieved that. I would say, if you want to publish a book, maybe Anne-Marie Hibbert is not the person you should reach out to about publishing a book. I've not published a book yet. I hope to, I haven't. But let's keep it real. I could probably point you to some people who have published books. But if book publishing is your main goal or one of your main goals, then you should have people in your network who have achieved that, who can help you with or guide you along that path or give you tips on how to successfully achieve that goal. Okay, you want to be an effective teacher. You want to be somebody who is doing well in the classroom each time. So you may want to seek out some of those faculty members around you, some of the people you know, and say, hey, can I sit in on your class? How did you navigate this? How do you teach? I'm being assigned to teach a case study class for the first time. How do I do that? I've never taught a case study class. I've been asked to teach a freshman seminar class. I've only taught graduate students. How do I do this? So for example, if you're about to graduate, going on your first tenure track job. You're just given a class to teach. You've only taught undergrad. You're now asked to teach a PhD seminar. I would suggest that rather than just give it a try and fall flat on your face, it probably would be a good thing to first have people in your network who can guide you, answer your questions, and help you achieve success with less hurdles. You should have mentors who are doing academic life or parenting or you name it, any aspect of academic or personal life the way you want to. These I call your role models, or that's how NCFDT also identifies them. For example, I have to have mentors in my life who don't just think that it's work, 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 and they're not supposed to keep themselves healthy. I go to the gym regularly. So I need to have people who take a more balanced approach, who value their family. For me, it's important to take vacations. So it is good to have people who you can then have a conversation with. Oh, I'm just being asked to take on a new role and it's gonna mean I can't have my weekends or evenings off. What do you think? You need to have those people who you can have a honest conversation with. They may say to you, well, Anne-Marie, that may mean you have to lower your goal in terms of publication. You may have to aim for publishing 1 paper per year or 1 every 2 years instead of 2 per year if you hope to maintain that balance. We need people to get us access to opportunities. So, for example, if you read my bio, or were listening earlier, I served on the board of one of our finance association or national associations. No, yes, it was through an election that I got to serve on the board, but I was nominated by somebody who had served on the board before, and when we met at a conference, we had a conversation, and next thing you know, this person nominated me to be on the board. Why am I saying that? You need people who can get you to access those opportunities. So don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Sometimes it may be your dean, your associate deans, your department chairs, your center directors. Have a conversation with them. I see this amazing mentoring network in my field, this national association. Do you know anybody who could get me connected? Because I see they have publications or they have events that I would like to join. How could I get involved? This one I think is super important. You need people who are willing to use their influence on your behalf, who are willing to use their, whether it be institutional capital, whatever they have, for your benefit when you're not around. So you need people who will speak on your behalf. Now, I've heard in coaching faculty, they'll say to me, and I'm saying this because I've been asked, then how do I do this? I mean, I can't force somebody to do it. But that's when you have to be willing to talk to people about what you're doing. People will only be able to talk on your behalf if they know what you're doing. So talk to if you're fortunate to have assigned mentors, talk to them. But if not, develop an informal relation. It doesn't have to be a formal mentor relation, but talk to your senior colleagues. Let them know what you're doing. And yeah, I'm going to say the dark side here. Some people have been asked, so what if I share my preliminary work and then somebody steals it? That happens in research field. Sorry, it does happen. I said, well, if you're not comfortable saying some of these things, put it in an email. We live in a digital society. So if you're afraid that if you tell somebody something, they may then run with your idea, send it in an email or have the conversation with somebody else around. But you need to make those connections so that somebody will be able to speak on your behalf when you're not there. And they're willing to use their influence. And again, that's not going to come from you just walking up and saying it to them or just a passing relationship. These connections have to be cultivated. You need people who are going to keep you accountable. And especially when it comes to things that don't have any built-in accountability. What do I mean? Though, for example, when you're giving your class, if you don't go to teach, your students are going to complain to your department chair. They're going to, or the dean, sometimes the president. However, if you don't, say you have a tenure track job, a research job, if you don't publish in the short term, nobody's going to know. In the long term, you could lose your job. So why do I say that? You need people who can keep you accountable for those things that matter, but don't have any built-in accountability. Your research, your writing, your personal life, your relationships with your kids, your spouse, your family members. And that's where you have to be willing to say, have a peer mentor. I have friends from my PhD days, I call them friends, even though, formally I could call them peer mentors, who I still work with and who I use as my accountability buddies. I say to them, I tell them up front, hey, I'm trying to send out 2 papers by the end of the summer. Can you help ensure that I do it? They're going to call me up. And you know what? The power of reciprocity, I do the same for them. So it's not like I'm asking them something and just expecting to receive. I'm also returning the favor. So be willing to, or ensure you have some accountability structures built in your mentorship network. Now, and I hate to say the final piece of the type of mentors you need, because I'm sure we could add more to this list. I'm just saying the common groups that I think are super important to have. You need people who know and care about you on a deeper level and are able to be your safe space, your emotional support. The ones who are going to not judge you, are not going to care if you publish in A journals or B journals, or whether or not your class didn't go well, or your evaluations were not good, or you didn't ace that service commitment, or didn't get the chair role. They are going to love you through all of the things you face. You need to have those people in your life. But not only are they going to love you through all of that, they're going to tell you the hard truth. They're going to tell you things sometimes that you may not want to hear, but you need to hear, and you'll know that it's coming from a place of love. And I'll pause here for a minute. And now I'm going to ask a hard question. Based on all of that mouthful that I just said, where do you think your greatest need right now in terms of whether it be professional or personal, that you, and if you have more than one, you can identify it in terms of people you can go to have a need met.
I know, Kirsten, you had your hand up. I don't know if we could use the reactions in the chat. Maybe that might make it.
How do we?
You can use it in the chat so I can read some of them. Your greatest need for what you're missing.
Anne-Marie, Kirsten had her hand up. I don't know if you saw her.
Oh, I didn't see them, sorry. Kristen,
Yeah, I had a question, like, how do we like express? How do we answer? Like, should
If you
we
could
chat
write
or we
it
talk?
in the, well, if you can talk, so I'm not the only one talking. Let's talk. I like talk.
Then I'm really sorry. I need to leave because I have 2 little ones at home.
Uh-oh,
So-
that's okay.
And like I've been taking notes, like all of this new information. My greatest challenge here is like, you know, like I have my PhD from sociology. When I was in grad school, we were trained to be, you know, researcher, right? Like a tenure track faculty who does research. So all of my former relationship is based on that assumption. You will be like doing research as a tenure track faculty. And now I am not tenure track faculty. I am like teaching as assistant professor. So all of my previous relationship that I considered as a mentorship, not quite working well when I'm making this transition. So that I'm trying to figure out, and that I need help.
Okay. I'm gonna, oops.
I had a comment. So the different types of mentors that you listed, they are not necessarily exclusive.
Correct,
True.
absolutely correct.
Yeah, and so, you know, I shouldn't say I'm new to WVU now because it's been almost a little over 2 years in my role here as a chair and a full professor. So some of the mentors do meet the criteria, but the influence part, you know, I think so as you move up, and if you're new to an institution, I think so that's a challenging piece for me that I recognize, because you don't know people, you're still reaching out, you're building that trust, you're building your social capital. And it's not easy because I guess everybody's taken up. So I had I did participate quite a bit in the first 2 years with a lot of meetings. The chairs group was there, and I've kind of identified a few people through that. But it may not, because we are in health science. I'm in health sciences. So I'm looking at some leadership here. So I guess the answer to your question is that's where I think so at my level is what I see a need for me.
Okay, so I will touch on what you said, because I totally agree. You're spot on when you said the needs overlap, and you're spot on with when you say a lot of times the more you go up, the more lonely it gets, the more lonely it gets. But one advice I'd give for you there is that's where you start to not just seek, but start creating, because there are people like you who have needs like you. So you start to create those, I don't want to say association, those groups. Do you see what I'm saying? And a lot, we tend to think, okay, because I'm in the College of Business, I need people who are doing, you know, are in my discipline or doing my field. And that is so not true. For example, chairs, associate chairs, you know, associate deans, a lot of their needs overlap a lot. And so I've tried I know this won't answer the question. I've tried as much as possible to form groups or form alliances with other chairs in the NCFD, the coaching group. Do you follow what I'm saying? Some are in disciplines far removed, but when we connect, which is why I continue to love that group, when we connect, our realities are so similar. You would be surprised. It doesn't matter that I'm in finance and they're in psychology. I have friends in art, but our situations overlap significantly. Sorry, that's a long answer to your short question or comment.
Anne-Marie, I wanted to appreciate everything that you shared. And because I had been made aware of like the NCFD mentoring map, and I don't know if you had planned to show it, but I put the link, I can put it in the chat.
I had it here, I was gonna put in the chat.
Oh, good. Yeah. But I really appreciate you breaking it down, like each of the ones that you talked about, because I think that you said something that resonated with me. Like sometimes we wait till the last minute to reach out to someone right before you need your questions answered, as opposed to like having that network mapped out to the point where you know who you're going to go to because you had conversations with them before. So I didn't know if you had it up there, but I thought it would be a nice little resource that people could work on their own at some point.
Absolutely. I was going to drop it in the chat at the end, but I just dropped it. It's the mentor map from NCFDD, and that should be helpful for each of you. I use it too. The one thing I would say, as I say to my participants, don't feel like these should just, because these are for your typical faculty. You may have other needs that are not on the map. So this is like a guide, a general guide. Add your additional buckets. You know, it's about what you find that you need help with. But good question, good tip there.
Another point I would like to make with mentorship and the discipline, a lot of us, and as we are new to the, say, as a new faculty member, we try to find mentors within our school, within our research area. We go to meetings and we pick them up. And I think so, sometimes if you get those mentors, at least my experience has been that use your mentors to identify people outside the discipline, as you're suggesting, Anne-Marie. I initially did not, but when I started being very active at a university level and communities, committees, that's where I really started bonding with people and knowing more. So again, someone who's starting off or new or looking for mentors, that would be my suggestion. But it's hard to get outside your school or your discipline initially, and get people to mentor you.
It is. It takes work, but it's good work. It's work that pays off dividends in the end. So, you know, it's about starting and not letting your limiting beliefs hold you back. Be willing to say, I'm going to take these steps. These are the 3 steps I'm going to take to get there. And if I don't touch on, I'm going to save the chat. So for example, Cheryl, I'm going to reach out to you about your comment on publications. I'm going to follow up because I have specific tips I want to offer to you. And Tony, I have noticed that. So please note that I'm not ignoring the other comments. I'm going to save the chat, which is why I wanted them there. Okay, and I see that Kirsten is also answering. See, we already seen that we have some, even within the small group, we can team up on some of this, because that's the beauty about this. Then you can see, I'm willing to help whoever is on this Zoom meeting that I can help, or who needs help in areas that I can help with or have some experience with. I'm more than happy to. So we'll have some follow-up on those. I have a couple more slides to finish here because I want to be respectful of everyone's time. But let me, sorry.
While Anne-Marie is pulling that up, I'll just take a moment to say how grateful I am for this topic and for what you've shared, and to say that I too would not be here without the mentors in my life. I'm so grateful for all of those people that have invested in me. I literally would not be here without them. And I just want to call one name, Dr. Gittel Rahil. That woman, the first person who allowed to publish with her, she was there from day one of my PhD program and helped me through every single thing to the very end. She was there when I graduated. And that lady just helped me, you know, like you were talking, Anne-Marie, having all these questions, you don't even know who to go to, you don't even know who to ask.
Mhm.
But it was a safe space, and it didn't matter, like you said, A journal, B journal, it no matter, I could always go to her. So Dr. Gitel Rael, thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. That's so important. I think all of
Yes.
us may have somebody feel that way about.
Absolutely. No, thank you. So please, I want to extend the offer again. If after this you have a question, I mean, this is what I said. If I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for people who have poured into me. And so I think I have a duty, a responsibility to help everyone who I can. So please, if I can't help you, I will try my best to find somebody else who can. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can achieve this. So I'm going to say some things you should be prepared to do, and then some things that you should try to avoid. Again, this list is not exhaustive. I just thought about or tried to put some things that I think are top of mind or super important. First, clearly identify your needs. I think this is where it starts, and the link that I put in the chat, which is from NCFDD, let me be clear, it's not, I didn't create it. It's a very useful list for new faculty. You can expand it to fill some of the other areas that I may or may not have mentioned, but which, based on your buckets of responsibilities, you know you have those needs. So try to identify your needs. Don't just say, oh, I need a mentor. Say specifically, what do you find yourself coming up with questions about? And I mean, it may be beyond your work. If you find that you're somebody who a lot of times you're getting frustrated or you're getting upset a lot, it may mean you need a safe space mentor. You need somebody to provide emotional support. It's a real need. You need to identify somebody who you can trust, who everything you don't have to start off by saying, I'm going to tell you something, but don't repeat this. When you're talking to your mentor, be specific with your ask. So don't say, oh, I need you to help me with my teaching. Say specifically, what about your teaching? So I know this, for example, I said I'm going to follow up about the comment in the chat about publication. So you need help with publication. What exactly do you need help with the publication? The process, identifying topics. Is it about getting good research question, coming up with ideas, or is it the execution? If you're an empiricist, is it that you need more tools? Those sort of things. Start to think, what exactly do I need? Because it may not mean that you need, I'm not invalidating those needs. I'm saying it may mean that you need 2 or 3 people to answer your publication need. You may need somebody to help you with your technical skills and somebody to help you with your writing skills. Or, you know, somebody to help you with how do you come up with ideas. So this is similar to the second one. Be respectful of your mentor's time. So you don't want to just be reaching out to your mentor constantly about things that, you know, you could try to figure out yourself, because you want this to be a relationship built on trust and respect. But at the same time, be willing to be vulnerable. Nothing is wrong with saying, I don't know, I don't have a clue. I don't know. It's one of the most freeing things. I have no idea. I don't know. Try to help me figure it out. So be willing to be vulnerable. It's not a sign of weakness. That's where the magic starts. I said this at the start, but it's so important I have to say it again. Nurture the relationship. You're not going to have a successful mentoring relationship where you only call that person when you have a need. Relationships need, just like anything, friendship, you need to build it over time. And be a mentor. It's hard to sit here and say, oh, I only have one mentor, but I have 0 mentees. Probably one of the reasons why you're not having more mentors, maybe because you're not willing to mentor somebody else. So mentor somebody else. In fact, a lot of the things I've learned is from mentoring others, probably just as much as being a mentee myself. So those are some of the do's. Short, I'll go through the don'ts, and then I'll ask for you to help add to that list. Some things not to do in your mentoring relationship or try to guard against. Some of you may not like this, but don't just walk up to somebody and say, can you be my mentor? And I'm saying this in terms of being so explicit. It doesn't, unless it's a situation, one caveat, if it's a situation where, you know, your department says you need to find a mentor and it's an assigned task. But mentoring relationships that are successful for the most part tend to develop organically. They don't, you know, it's not, I walk up to you and say, can you be my mentor? Try not to have just one mentor. I ask this at the front. If you have just one or maybe just 2, you probably need to look at expanding your mentoring network. Start looking at specific ways you can broaden your circle of influence. And please don't think you're too needy. Don't think that, yes, you may need to check yourself first. Be very self-aware to make sure that you're not just wanting too many things. But that aside, I think in this room, we have people who, you know, very self-aware. Don't think because you're asking Anne-Marie for something, that means you're asking too much or you're infringing on my time. I'm an adult. Most of the people you're talking to are adults. They can say no if they want to say no. So give them a chance to say no and be willing to accept no. Okay. Do not ask for detailed description or step-by-step instructions. One of the, I'm sure you've been on the receiving end of this. Somebody's asking you how to do something, but they don't want to do any of the work. They want you ask for guideposts, but don't ask for detailed roadmaps. Be willing to do some of the work yourself. I would say try your best not to blur the boundaries. So for example, I don't think you want to have your safe space be necessarily your department colleagues. Okay, it may work for you, but things can become kind of iffy if, you know, the people who you are reporting to are the same people you were telling all of your, for want of a better word, crazies. You know, you want to be careful about that. So as much as possible, and this is why I like this approach to mentoring, where you are having people for certain needs. You know, they're not necessarily all your friends. They don't have to look exactly like you. Yes, you'll have some people who share your realities, but they don't have to be the people who are serving in every single role. And maybe somewhat more important, most importantly, don't be afraid to walk away from a situation that's not serving you well. It's okay. If it's not serving you, you may walk away. That's probably the best thing to do in some relationships. So sometimes you need another mentor, sometimes you need less mentors. Now, before I open up for questions, I am going to show a very short clip, a video. I like videos. That I don't know if some of you know Jay Shetty, but I think this one, I like this talk. So it's very short. It's not going to take too long.
You've touched on it a few times, Russell. You've talked about not doing this on your own, having people around that you trust. You talk about in the book, needing mentors. How useful is that for you in the process of having worked with people who've been through these steps and these programs before you?
It's absolutely vital for me, Jay, to have mentors because I'm still crazy. I still have bad ideas every single day. Now I have the opportunity that if I'm thinking of doing something crazy, I ring someone up before I do it That's the key bit. Before I do it and go, hey, I'm thinking of doing this crazy thing. Should I do it? They go, don't do the crazy thing. And then I have a moment and I don't do the crazy thing. Because when you are emotionally involved in your own life, and your emotions stop you being rational and clear-headed. But other people, you know this, that when I give advice to other people, I give good advice. If Jay were to ask me, oh, listen, this is happening in my life, I go, oh, no, don't do that, Jay. Da, da, da. But in my own life, I'm like an idiot. I'm making stupid mistakes. I'm knocking stuff over. I'm being sick down my own top. I'm a fool. But in Jay's life, I'm very wise. Yeah. So it's important to have the counsel of other people. Collectively and in community, we are powerful. It's only as individuals we're very, very stupid.
And how long did it take you to go from calling someone after you messed up to before?
That's a key part of the journey, because like it's very easy to bring someone when you're smacked up off your head, or if you're drunk, or if you've just made yourself puke up in a toilet, or you've bought some dumb stuff, or you've looked at some pornography, you've spent too much time staring at your phone, go, oh, I've done it, I feel filthy, I don't feel good anymore. If you bring them in advance of it, then you get an opportunity to do something else. Here are the simple things you do. You speak with someone who's further down the path than you are. You speak to someone who's not so far down the path, and you help them, and you just think about what they're doing for a change. And then also, in addition to this, you seek the collective company so that you recognize your identity as a member of a community, however you identify, and importantly, prayer and meditation for me, a recognition of the transcendence and people that can help you in those areas that are further down that particular path.
And how incredible would it be if we had a planet where everyone was thinking about everyone else? Because then everyone would have 7.999 billion people thinking about them, as opposed to one, which is quite a incredible thing to think about.
Jay, you're so advanced and you're really good at this. I watch you doing this thing. You're like sort of a domineering time lord. You're like someone from the future. Hey, we've got this guy coming in here. You are, to use the parlance of the millennials, you're very, very woke.
Yeah, you're embarrassing me, but thanks, Rustin.
And on that note, I hope the language did not offend anybody, but I thought it kind of sums up my perspective on mentoring very well. We need a community. Questions, comments from the floor.
First, I'd just like to say thank you so much for a really amazing presentation and good food for thinking and acting, like, you know, to know what we need to do to go forward. And I just wanted to share, I know you were getting to this, you were talking about our activism, but I will tell you how important having a network is. Just like as a graduate student, I had something, and I was just recounting this with a colleague the other day about a situation that unfolded in a department. It wasn't my main department, but the point was there was something really nasty that had been done, and it was offensive to me, and it had racial undertones. And I remember that I was so livid and upset, and I wrote this whole big letter, and I was ready to I felt I wanted to take down the whole department and the not necessarily the university, but anybody, blah, blah, blah. So thankfully I had a cultural mentor, and I went to that person and I cried in their office, and I had them read my letter, and I had them, listen to me and just shut up and hear everything I felt, and then walk me through a process of first affirming me and everything I felt and validating it, and then talking to me about the potential implications if I went the route that was really emotionally driven. Mm-hmm. And they talked me down off the ledge. And I'm happy that they did, because one of the things that they pointed out to me was that a potential consequence could be that it could present some obstacles for me when I move forward. And sure enough, I considered those things. They didn't tell me what to choose, but I chose differently, and it was important. But because I had that person who was not from my field or department or anything, they helped talk me down off the ledge. And then I was able to sort of regroup, but walk away feeling valid, like somebody heard me at the institution who was a legitimate person, and then they empowered me to sort of go forward with a strategy, check in with them, how I was doing, and all that kind of stuff. So I only wanted to share that to say, that's why I think the network was so important, because I couldn't have if it was just the people I relied upon who were helping me with my dissertation, it would not have worked, because none of those people really would have understood. Yeah. But anyway, I just mentioned that. Hopefully that's helpful to somebody, because that kind of stuff can happen. So
it absolutely is. Tony, you look like you had a comment.
No, I just figured I'd show my face since we were all here together. Yeah. Well, I'll say one thing. I do appreciate you saying, don't explicitly say, will you be my mentor? Because because I feel like it's almost like asking someone for a recommendation letter that you don't know. Like, because it's like so close, like to like your personality, like or if it's gonna work as a relationship. And I know that sometimes when someone like asks me for a recommendation, I'm like, I don't know anything about you, like it feels more like one-sided, I guess you can say. Like, and even though I know like mentoring, you do give, a lot, but it is a reciprocal relationship. Like you want to know that you're not there like as like an ATM for advice. And so, but I would say, like, what would you suggest the approach to be?
Ask for specifically what you want. So, for example, if it is about publication, I'll use myself. Why do I use myself? I'll use myself since it's easy for me to pick on me. So say you look on my CV and you see that I published a paper while I was a PhD student. And you want to know how did that happen. You shoot me an email and say, hey, can we have coffee one of these days? I want to talk to you about your publication journey. We sit down and talk, and we talk about my publication journey. We then talk about my daughter, who I can help her talk about. You talk about your family, and we talk about Manhattan cancer. So we talk about everything. Then we have a follow-up where we don't even talk about publication. Then, you work on your paper, and then you reach out to me one day and say, hey, I have this draft. Do you mind looking at it for me? And you send me the draft. Do you follow what I'm saying? And that's how you're nurturing the relationship. Before you know it, 2 years, we have hung out at some barbecues. I've now become your mentor, even though we haven't used the word. But you see what I'm saying? I'm now serving that. I'm now fulfilling that need you had or have. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. And I think that it's just good to like make the expectations clear as well. And every mentor and every mentee have different expectations like of the relationship. And so I have mentors that I haven't talked to in a while. I have mentors I talk to all the time. And I have mentors that are very structured, that are like, let's set up a recurring like check-in because you go AWOL sometimes and I wonder what's going on. And so, so I know the different levels of expectation, and that if I haven't talked to them, if I've missed a recurring meeting or so, I need to check in because this person is expecting, to make sure that like I'm keeping in touch. And some people don't need that. And it's just knowing, I think that that's why those expectations have to be like a little bit explicit sometimes. And so that no one feels like they're on the downside of the relationship.
Absolutely. Ron, you're the student in the front I have to call on.
Well, first, thanks for taking time to talk about this really important topic with us. And I was kind of sitting here thinking about like my mentorship needs, and I'm a third year on the tenure track in the College of Applied Human Sciences. And one expression I've kind of heard about academia is a pie eating contest where the award is more pie. So something I've kind of run into in my kind of short tenure here is kind of the balance. There's always more you could do. You could always be at your computer running regressions, trying to do some factor analysis, etc. And so in terms of my mentorship needs, I've kind of, as I've been thinking about my progress and working on my mid-tenure review and everything, just kind of reflecting on my time here at WVU, I've come to realize that that's something that is kind of lacking as far as how do you, not burn yourself out at both ends, so to speak. You have your Dr. Bolden, and you also have Ron time as well, because obviously the work, there will always be more work to replace the work you just, so it was like a never-ending to-do list that seems to kind of feel like a conveyor belt of sorts. So all that to say, I'm wondering, like, what are your thoughts as far as, obviously as junior faculty, but just generally speaking, for people who are interested in, full-time faculty life, how do you kind of make the stars align in a way that doesn't get you burnt ultimately, as far as that kind of work-life balance?
Okay, so I hate to sound like I'm a salesperson, but the one thing I would recommend if you can get sponsorship is to do the NCFDD Faculty Success Program. It's a 12-week boot camp, and if you can you get it discounted since we're an institutional member. And the reason why I'm saying that 12 will, in my opinion, help you to achieve a lot of the things you're asking about. I did it in just when I was about to go up for tenure. And I mean, I'm first gen. I don't have anybody who could tell me what tenure track is like. So pretty much most of what I learned, or all of what I learned about how to be a productive scholar and at the same time have tried to achieve that elusive work-life balance, was from being in that program, which is why I continue to coach for them. Do you see what I'm saying? Because in that program, you're taught how to have both professional goals and personal goals, and we treat them both as equal. So yes, you should be getting your publications, you should be doing well in the classroom, but one of the first things you have to do is in that program, you have to make a strategic plan. Every semester you have to make a strategic plan, and your strategic plan has to have your professional goals as well as your personal goals. And each week, when I'm coaching my faculty, they have to tell me if they met their research and writing goals, but how are they doing on the personal goals, their health and wellness, their family relationships. So it's not about burnout, because I've also met faculty who, in trying to achieve those goals, end up in the hospital. We have faculty who, the reason why they came to NCFDD is because they came from after being in the hospital. They run themselves for it. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's my biggest tip for you.
Thank you.
I would like to just say something that came out of I think it was our last workshop, Tony, when we did I just did an introduction to the NCFDD, Anne-Marie, just sort of walk folk through it. And one of the conversations that emerged from that was, I mentioned Carrie Rockamore's book, which I know is pretty old now, the Black Academics Survival Guide, but there was a recommendation. I think there were a couple of the faculty who were somewhat familiar with it, but none of us had read it all the way through. And we were thinking about another book club thing, but we wanted to connect it to direct action. So maybe working through her book for discussion about, academia and being successful, but also right in time for creating our work plans for the next year. You understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So the goal was like, if we were having these conversations, because a lot of what we talked about was really related to what you're talking about right now. What do you need to know? What kind of help do you need? But then also, striking a balance. So we thought it might align well. So it may be something. I think there were like at least 4 or 5 people on that particular call who were very interested. And yes, I'd love to do that and prepare in the spring for preparing my faculty workload document in a more intentional way to build in these sorts of things. So I may come back to you to say, that may actually be a group that when it convenes to sort of talk about those things, we can simultaneously be building on some of these other pieces.
Absolutely. Ron, one other thing quickly, that's absolutely true. I mean, Ron, one more thing I'd say, what do you currently get the Monday motivators?
Is that through the NCFD?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I mean, even if you're not going to do the boot camp, say that's not something that you can do right now, they offer like short webinars and there are a lot of them on their website that touch on a lot of these things, and they really teach you things that you don't learn in grad school. I'm just being blunt here because honestly, nobody taught me how to do this thing when I was in grad school. I don't know if you were that lucky.
I wasn't, but thank you.
Well, Anne-Marie, I think I know we've gone over about like 4 minutes. I think it was worth it. I think that this was amazing. I'm happy that we recorded it. And we appreciate you. And as I said, as we pull together the plan to work through Rockamore's book and utilize her website and just have sort of create a space. I guess it could be like a group mentoring where we come together once a month and people who are interested are thinking about their goals and that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
This will be a nice follow-up to that. So thank you all so much. Thank everyone who came out today. I know some people had to leave early, but I think it was a really one of our best ones. So thank you so much for all the time that you put into this. And I look forward to seeing you all soon.
Thank you. And thank you all. I appreciate it.
So much.